I shared with Fran.
Okay. I grew up with Albert Antrim's stories, so if I tell you more than you want to know, why just turn me off. Albert was born in Jasper County in 1885. His father was James Antrim, and he was a teacher and a farmer. And his grandfather was Dr. Thomas Antrim, and he was a farmer also, besides being a doctor. And I gathered from the book that we read that he was a self-made doctor, probably. Albert didn't have a very happy time as he was growing up. His mother died when he was 9, and his father died when he was 14. So he didn't have a lot of privileges. He started to school in high school in 1900, and my mother and dad both started with him at that time, and they went all through school together. And they were very good friends and continued to be for the rest of their lives. He was, even though there was a little romantic rivalry there, but my mother picked out the best man. And after high school, he wasn't able to afford college and so forth, and I think I am right about this, that he went west and did a few things and tried out a lot of different things, and then eventually he got back here, and he went to Chicago, and through a former teacher, Miss Harris, he was given a chance to get onto the Tribune. So in 1917 he went to work for them as traffic manager, and as I always understood, and Mother and Dad both told us quite proudly, that he was the innovator of an instigator of going to Canada and having newsprint shipped directly to Chicago for the Tribune, and saved the Tribune many dollars. And he was traffic manager from 1917 to 1944, and then he was made business manager, and he kept that job until till he retired in 1954. But the thing I remember the most about him is that he kept very close ties with Rensselaer, always. He loved Rensselaer and everything about it. And one of his special things that he tried to do, but it never worked, he tried to get Lefty Clark to leave Rensselaer and come and work for the Tribune. But always, as I went through things that my mother had saved, every time there was something good or bad from our family, we heard from Albert Antrim, even though he was very busy and very influential. And I think that's probably all I am.
Maybe somebody has something else to say.
And that's just to show that we know he was here and he passed this way.
Whenever you want me to start.
Well,
Why don't you go up there and stand in the grass behind John?
Yeah, stand behind it.
Well, as you all can see, there's quite a few of them. John was the main staff of the family, I guess. He and Will Eager, my grandfather, they had a hardware store and a grocery store. First they had a hardware store together, and then they decided to split it up, so John took the hardware store, and John took the grocery store, and Will took the hardware store. And my father took it after he died. He came back from Purdue after 3 years of college down there to run the store for the family. John, he was married twice. His first wife died, and his two wives were cousins. And then they lived right where, on the corner of Van Rensselaer and Kellner, on the southwest corner. They had a lot in there and a little house, and the great-grandmother, who lived to be 101 and 7 months, lived there with her 3 daughters. Her other daughter got married a man, a station agent in Lowell, Indiana. And so my father was handling John's estate and business in the latter years because John wasn't able to handle it. And he got the grandmother and her daughters to move from the house, which they sold, and Sears built the building in there and so on and so forth, which you all remember that. And they moved over to the big house where the Bank One drive-up. It was a house that very similar to DeLoss Thompson's house, which is renovated on Front Street by Angelica. Beautiful house. And John lived there after his second wife died, and with his 3 sisters, and they all passed away there. And when they had her 100th birthday, they had a birthday party, and had a long front porch, and they let all the school kids out, and they lined up, and every kid in school went onto the porch and got ice cream and cake. So that was quite an ordeal for the town. I have a newspaper that relates all this, but John had a son, Trevor, who passed away, and he had a boy, Johnny Joe, and he had a disease that his bones were firm, his joints were firm, and he passed away. And so Walter was a son who died an infant from one of his first wives, I think it was. And May was his first wife. May was his first wife, and John, and Ida was his second wife, and Trevor was a boy. And he worked in the grocery store. He went to Yale 1 year. I don't know whether he was there a week or 2 weeks. But he never went back. And it's quite interesting. John did a lot for people in town in the bank, and when the bank closed, why I escorted him to Chicago to get some money for the bank, which was in there where Smith's is now. And we went to the Continental Bank in Chicago, and we got $90,000 in cash, and they laid it out on the table, and they asked John if he wanted to count. He said, "No, you counted it, didn't you? Just put it in the satchel." So we put it in an alligator bag about so long, and when they wanted to take us down to the station, so they did. They had a policeman take us to the station. We got on the train. John says, "I'll sit by the window and you sit by the aisle, and we'll put the bag between us." And that it didn't bother me at all with that much money in the bag. I didn't think anything. I was young yet. So we got to the station here in Rensselaer, and DeLoss Thompson was there to meet us in an old Hupmobile. Took us down to the bank. We put it in the vault, locked the vault. I walked home where I live now, and it was fixed supper for me when I got home, and I hadn't thought much about sitting there with money in the alligator bag, and fellow started to read the Republican newspaper, and the paper got to going like this. So that's but he did do a lot for people that people didn't know about, that I knew about, and of course not all of it, of course. But he was one of the pillars of the community.
He was once mayor.
He was mayor in 1901 and 2, I think. That's when they had 2-year terms. Then they had several mayors, and then they finally got me by 64, something like that. 3 terms, that's enough to serve the community.
I heard you were going to run next time.
Yes, I'm going to run. I'm going to run down the Iroquois River in a boat.
Right now, I think we're ready to go up to Dr. Alder's.
Moses Braddock Alder. The Alders came from Hesse-Darmstadt, which is on the border of Germany and Switzerland. And he descends from Jacob Alder. Edwin's mother also did too, as she was Emma Alder. But Moses was the son, and I think this is probably Simon's grave. And Moses Alder was the son of Simon and Nancy Braddock Alder. He was born in Greenfield, Indiana. His father, Simon, was a Jasper County treasurer in the early 1950s. He had bought land in Jasper County from the government in 1851. And Simon and Nancy Braddock Alder's children was Moses Braddock Alder and John Quincy Alder. Many of you will remember he lived at the far south end of Front Street. You do remember him, don't you, Beulah? Johnny Quincy Alder? They lived on Front Street. And the children were Sarah and Nancy and David and Isaac. We often hear Isaac's name is Isaac N.S. Alder, so that's where he belongs. And Moses B. Alder got his medical degree at Rush Medical Center in 1858, and he began his medical practice in Rensselaer on September the 16th, 1861. On September the 14th, he had married, in 1860, he married Elizabeth Jane Peacock. She was a daughter of Jonathan and Hannah Sharp Peacock, and they came to Rensselaer. Elizabeth Jane was born in Timberland, Ohio, and they had 2 daughters, Anna Lillian, who married Albert Edwin Kirk, and Gertrude, who married Harvey J. Cannell, and that would be Gwendolyn's grandparents. And Moses B. Alder was one of the first real good doctors and surgeons that Rensselaer had.
Put that up there, Helen.
Thank you.
Put it on the top. I just noticed that Ezra Clark is up here, and you know Ezra Street and Clark Street? That's who that was named after.
Our addition is Clark's.
Park here, or in the park, see? Cemetery. And most people look at the cemetery like a place for the dead, but we keep it as a place for a lot of fond memories. In fact, as we walk through here, we speak to everybody, and ever since I've been in Rensselaer, Mordecai Chilcote intrigued me for some reason. So I began to do some research on him. He was born in Ashton County, Ohio, moved here to Rensselaer, and was a beloved attorney, as all accounts go. He married Elizabeth, who was a sister of E.P. Judge Hammond here. And they had 3 children. One count says 3 children, but in his obituary it left out Mary. One child was Gaylord, who lived in Los Angeles, California, and the other one was Fred. Now Fred is buried just over the way on this side of the river on the bend. along with his wife Allie, and his mother-in-law Jane Hurd Kinney, and one of his twin daughters, Elizabeth, who was never married. The other twin daughter married William Noonan and lived in Pensacola, Florida. Mordecai was one of 14 children, and he and 6 of his brothers served in the Civil War. He enlisted first in the 9th Volunteers, which was General Milroy's unit, and incidentally, I found out that it was it was the first volunteer unit in the whole Union Army. 3 months later, though, he became ill and he came home to recuperate. I didn't know he could do that. They couldn't do that when I was in the Army, I know. But anyway, he re-enlisted then in the 48th, and he served in West Virginia and Tennessee. He died, well, maybe I ought to tell you, he was born in 1840, and he died here April the 21st, 1902. Now, his wife died 17 years before him, and I couldn't find out any more, but one reference said that she had a sister who had an invalid husband, and when the sister died, as they called her Aunt Lizzie, she raised 4 of her children besides the 3 that she had. I figure Mary must have died in infancy or something, because she was not living when Mordecai died. Mordecai was in poor health. He was suffering from Bright's disease, which I think is some kind of a kidney disease, and also diabetes, but on this Sunday afternoon he felt real good and they took him for a ride. In the evening he was feeling so much better, his daughter-in-law took the children to church, and later on a man by the name of Willis Imes, who was his night nurse, came in and helped him dress for bed. About an hour later, while Willis Imes said he heard him gasping for breath, and he knew that was the end. His funeral was supposed to be held a week later on the following Sunday, in order that his son in California could arrive. But they got a telegram from his son Gaylord out there that he could not make connections with the fast train, that he could not make it for the funeral. So they held it on a Sunday afternoon, and all the stores in town closed at from 1:30 to 3:30 in his honor. Among his pallbearers was Tim's great uncle again, John Eager. Willis Imes was one of them. There was a D.H. Yeoman, too, who was a younger brother of Thomas, and you probably have all heard of him, was the first white child born in this county. His funeral was held at the Presbyterian Church with Reverend A.G. Wirt, and it was well attended, as the obituary said. I think that about does it for Mordecai. Are you going to talk about Hammond today?
No.
Okay. I'd like to tell you one more thing. Elizabeth Yeoman, and I came across this by not Yeoman. Elizabeth. Tell me. Chelcote, yeah. She was a sister of this Hammond. And Hammond also had a brother by the name of Abraham. He was older. And Abraham was a lawyer in Terre Haute. And Edwin practiced with him for a short while. Well, his brother Abraham was quite well off and had a mansion in Indianapolis at the corner of Washington and Senate Street. Well, in the election of 1856, he was elected lieutenant governor, and a man by the name of Ashbel Willard was the governor. Well, Ashbel got along all right until 3 days before his term was up, and he died. So, we've had Abraham was the governor of the state for 3 days. At that point, Henry Lane, a wealthy lawyer from Crawfordsville, took over. He was elected, but 4 days later he resigned because he found out that he was elected to the United States Senate, and then Oliver Morton, our Civil War governor, took over. So Indiana is the only state that's had 4 governors in 103 days. If you're ever on Jeopardy, well, you'll be all right.
Yeah.
Okay, we're going to cut across now.
Is it Simon? Is this where Simon Says comes from?
I don't know. This is Simon Parr Thompson's grave, and the little village of Parr was named after him. His middle name was Parr. He was born in Hancock County, Ohio. After moving to Rensselaer, he taught school for a short time. He was also employed by the Thompson-McCoy Bank while studying law. He entered into law practice and headed the Thompson Brothers law firm. He served as prosecuting attorney and eventually as judge. He was the first judge to sit on the bench in the new courthouse. He was probably the wealthiest man in Jasper County at the time, owning countless acres in the north part of the county. He started a cattle farm near Fair Oaks, and it became the Lawler Ranch that we heard about at our last meeting, and eventually it became the Fair Oaks Farms. He sold land to Benjamin Gifford, and that's how that part of the country became settled. He bought 80 acres in what is now Wheatfield, and he platted the first 6 blocks of that town. His death came suddenly as he was talking to his son-in-law, Harry Curry. Simon had just returned from Florida, where he had hoped that the warm climate would be good for Mrs. Thompson, who had been ailing for a long time. Mrs. Thompson finally was taken to Longcliff in Logansport in hopes that she would receive help there. So that's our story about Simon, and we have our friend Furman is his grandson, and he's buried here, and as Faye is, and Bill's father, Furman, and 2 of Furman's children. Now, I don't know if Mrs. Thompson is buried here or not, but she died quite a number of years later, but she was in Logansport for a long time. Okay, now we're going on.
You stumble, friend.
Yeah.
People do like I do. They want to stop and look at all the inscriptions from there. It is an interesting place. It's a lot of fun. Well, this is David Knowles. Now, David Knowles was born in Holmes County, Ohio in 1821. He died January the 16th, 1913 at the age of 91 years, 4 months, and 1 day. He came to Jasper County in 1834, and he remained here the rest of his life, a total of 78 years. He was the 7th son of a family of 8. He had 7 brothers and 3 sisters. Now, it means that he was the 7th son of a family of 8 sons, but he also had 3 sisters. And his Sarah Yeoman was his sister, and he came with Sarah and Joseph and his father, John Knowles, to Jasper County, and they built the first cabin in Rensselaer down where the town bridge is now. For a while, he carried the mail from Logansport to Buncombe, Illinois, making 2 trips each week on horseback. On March the 10th, 1842, he married Phoebe Piper Benjamin. She was a widow, but she was very young. Her husband had made a trip north in the dead of winter and froze to death. And they hadn't been married very long, but David finally married her, and their wedding license was issued by George Spitler, and we're going to visit his grave next. They lived together and managed to celebrate their 60th wedding anniversary, which in those days was quite an item. David was always active in the growth of Jasper County, and in 1867 he erected a 3-story hotel on the site almost exactly where the cabin had once stood. One of his daughters, Mary Ellen, married Henry Grow, Bill Grow's grandfather. Okay, now we're going to have quite a walk to the very edge of the cemetery.
Libby call or
Oh, is she with me?
In Virginia, and he died August of 17th, 1863. The fact that he was born in Virginia had a lot to do with St. Joe acquiring some land. He settled first in what is now Newton County and was our first county clerk. He established the first courthouse in a log cabin on his farm just south of Brook. When it was decided that the seat of government should be what it is now, in Rensselaer, he moved here, acquiring land out where St. Joseph is now. He built our first jail, and he was our first school teacher. The jail wasn't very safe because the first prisoner he put in got out that night, and they fixed the locks and tried to fix it all up, and they put him back in, and he got out again, and he didn't know where to go, so he finally showed up at George's house for breakfast. Because he was from Virginia, he was a Southern sympathizer. And he vowed that God should strike him dead if he ever supported Abraham Lincoln. And he tried to start a rebellion in Jasper County, but on August the 17th, 1863, he was struck by lightning and killed.
He really
right.
was.
And his family thought God had something against them, and they were very anxious to sell the land, which St. Joe finally acquired. Okay, one to talk about because he remembers General Haley, and I do too. And Marcia, you remember the time we stayed at the English Hotel in Indianapolis and saw the general? He was so glad to see somebody from Rensselaer. Okay, turn the page, Beulah. He was born in Rensselaer November the 14th, 1872, and died in Indianapolis in February 1945. He was for a time part owner of a newspaper in Rensselaer, and later full owner of the Rensselaer Republican. He was a lieutenant of the old Company M of the National Guard. He worked his way up to the rank of Brigadier General following World War I. He served in 2 wars. In 1916, he was in the Mexican Border War, and a few months following the end of that war, the guns were booming for World War I, and he was off again. He received a leg injury which developed in complications that required amputation. He went into the newspaper business in Frankfurt for 2 or 3 years, and then to Indianapolis and became a member of the executive personnel of the street railway company of that city. He served in this capacity until just 3 years before his death. Anybody remember anything about, do you remember the general, Jim? Well, his daughter was a great friend of Elizabeth Hoover's.
Where did he live, Beulah?
He lived at the English Hotel in Indianapolis, but you mean in Rensselaer?
Yeah, right.
I don't know.
He lived in that brick house just south of us, not for the bridge, but
Up on the hill?
up on the hill.
Uh-huh.
It's been worked over.
Yeah. Now we just have a little short walk. He was older than Simon. He was born in 1829 and he died in 1896. He was the 3rd child in a family of 10. His mother was a McCoy, and he came here with the McCoys to set up a bank. His mother's brother was Thomas McCoy, and when he was 4, the family moved to Hancock County, Ohio, and that's where Simon was born. Simon was younger. His first schooling was in his home, for this was wilderness country. Later he went to school, and when he was 15 he taught school. When he was 21 he went to work in the McCoy Bank for his uncle. he came to Jasper County with his cousin Alfred McCoy to establish a bank. I think you will find his brothers David and Thomas are buried over here, as is Robert Dwiggins, and they were all important in the building of Rensselaer. Robert was a lawyer. That's Robert Dwiggins, and he came to Rensselaer in 1858 and studied law under General Milroy. He was the one who discovered that Cicero Tapman was doing the General Inn, and that's what finally caused the fire of the courthouse. He set up his own practice in 1860, and I told you about Cicero Tapman was the one that was handling General Milroy's business at that time, but he was doing him in, and Mr. Dwiggins and Simon Thompson were the ones that discovered it. But I thought it was interesting that although Simon Thompson became the first judge to sit on the bench, Alfred died the year the courthouse was built. Mary Ellen Travis, of course this was Mary Ellen Fisher's great-grandmother and great-grandfather, and it's after Mary Ellen Travis that she was named. And she died June the 12th, 1916, a great day, because I was born.
Happy birthday to you.
I can remember that in Mary Ellen can't. Well, you'll find that Robert Dwiggins and the other Thompson. Yes.
Get Danny out here.
Okay.
Benjamin Harris first came and bought 320 acres of land in Newton Township, Jasper County, out on the Buncombe Road. Later he came to town and he purchased the ground where the first school building had been. He bought this land from Mr. Babbs, who had purchased the old school for $800, and he'd done a little work on it. And Mr. Harris married Emily Chrysler, not Kreitzer, Chrysler. And he was a surveyor in the county during the years of 1876, 77, and 78. They had one daughter, Flora, and Mr. Harris purchased the ground where the Harris homes stand, and he designated it at his death to be used to house widows and their children until the youngest child had finished school or dropped out. The old homes have been torn down and replaced by apartments, which are still in use today. There was a member of four-member board to be appointed to see that these homes were kept up from the income of the farm. Flora painted china, and her father had made her a special place in which she fired her china. One piece was given to Edwin's mother, which I still have. Mr. Charles C. Pryor had come from Canada to Chicago and then to Rensselaer, where he had bought a poultry business which he operated. He got acquainted with the name of Flo Pryor, and Edwin and his brother Donald often told these two tales of sitting on their front porch steps and watching Mr. Pryor coming to call on Flo for the first time. I suppose these boys were curious of a man coming to call on Flo, as she had been a maiden lady for a long time, and he had never married. He walked the triangle twice before getting the nerve up to go knock on her door. They finally married, and it was her wish that Mr. Pryor have a life estate in the house until his death, but that's not the way it ended. Edwin's mother told me that she and Mrs. Harris were members of the Elder Bloom Club, and others of this club were Mrs. Spittler, Mary Yates, Emma Roadstar, and Maggie Honan, and they made their own fun. It sounds as if they were a neighborhood group. Mr. Pryor had 2 Franklin cars, but the engines were almost all aluminum, and he never had to worry about putting water or antifreeze in them. Edwin said they mixed the oil and the gasoline together. One of the cars he drove, and the fancier one Flo drove. I remember when they disposed of the cars, and everybody was after aluminum during the war. And they said the whole engines were made from aluminum.
Wasn't you, Kirk, the dealer on aluminum cars, Franklin cars?
They were Franklin.
I know Mrs. Fenwick had one.
He was my great uncle.
He was. Well, I thought the Elder Bloom Club was quite an organization. They were all neighborhood later on. They made their own fun.
We're not going to say anything about Cord except that we owe her a debt of gratitude for our building that we have now. And this is where she's buried. So we'll give her a flower.
Sure.
It should be pink though.
Well, it may be. It'll fade.
Yeah. And here we have Lefty, and I expect you all have a story to tell about Lefty. He was born in Red Key, Indiana, and in 1894, and he died in 1970. He attended Rensselaer schools, but did not graduate, and he has a wonderful story about how Mr. Dean suggested that maybe he would do better if he'd go down and sweep the floors at the Republican office. And he did a lot of that. He worked in the Republican office from the time he was a child. He was interested in sports and anything that went on in Rensselaer. He was known for his obituaries as fitting tributes to those people whose lives touched his, and so many. His gospel was read from top to bottom and is remembered by all those who remember Lefty.
Who are these Clarks over here, Beulah?
Okay, that's his mother and father. Leslie owned the Republican, and Harold was his brother, and Robert was a nephew.
Beulah,
Well,
Yes.
I was in the Methodist Hospital shortly after Lefty had left, and 4 or 5 of the nurses came to ask me if I was from Rensselaer, if I knew Lefty, and they said, I said, yes. They said, how is he? I said, he's coming along fine. They said, we didn't see how he could ever live after Paul P. Great in France.
One tragic thing that happened to him, he had a 1-lung furnace, and he fell down in it. With
He was
his,
downstairs after having taken a bath. With
Yeah.
the bathtub wrapped around him and he stepped on his 1-lung furnace.
and John Jackson, they called him, and he came over and pulled him out. He was terribly burned. And
Every birthday that
You wanna give-
he had, Denver Tudor and I put tune tobacco down to it.
His favorite flower was a bachelor butt.
Okay, now we're going
Want to give Lefty a flower?
What?
You wanna
We're
get-
going to- of course, Lefty would never forgive me.
He liked red, we know that.
Yeah, he loved somebody that had a red hat, and I never did know who she was. Now this is Abraham Halleck and Laurel. They were Charlie's parents, and he was the son of James and Mary Halleck, and they're buried in the Fair Oak Cemetery. His birth followed Lincoln's election to the presidency by just 2 or 3 days. Everybody always said, was he a Jew? Well, he wasn't. His dad was a loyal Republican, I guess, and so they named him Abraham. He was 5 years old when his family moved near Lake Village. He taught school after graduating from the 8th grade, which they often did back then. In the summers, he attended Central Normal College in Danville and received his bachelor's degree when he was 19 years old. He was admitted to the bar in 1884 after studying law under Peter H. Ward of Kentland. And Peter Ward was one of our judges in the circuit court. In 1908, he was elected to serve as state senator, representing Jasper, Newton, White, and Stark counties. He was a county commissioner during the building of our courthouse. He gave Jasper County its first telephones. Now, I think what it meant by that, Rensselaer had telephones before that time, but he connected DeMont, Nyman, and Wheatfield, and it took 150 miles of wire to do that. He helped to found Curtis Creek, and he died September the 5th, 1944. And I think many of you remember both Abe and Laura, and their daughter was buried here too with them. And there was another child, two more, another girl and another boy besides Charlie. Now we're going down to Charlie.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
I don't know, and I need to say too much about Charlie. I think we all remember him. Unfortunately, as you drive by on Decoration Day, there are no flowers here. And I think it would be nice if we,
There's been a
somebody.
flag for the last 2 years because I put one on.
Oh, good.
But I do have an iron. I did find an iron flag holder this year.
Good.
And I'm going to put it on this year.
Well, that's wonderful. I was going to get a pot of flowers and bring them out too, and I may yet, because I think he needs
Sure, I do
some
too.
recognition. Okay, well, he was born in DeMont, Indiana, on August the 22nd, 1900. He died March the 3rd, in 1986, in a hospital in Lafayette. He was elected to the office of prosecuting attorney in Jasper and Newton County. He went to Congress in 1935 and served 18 consecutive congressional terms. He was majority leader while the Republican Party was in power in the 1947 and 48 term, and also in 1953 and 54. He never lost an election. That was something he was very proud of, and I think he retired when he did so that he wouldn't lose one. He retired in 1968 and returned here to Rensselaer. And he and Blanche are both buried here. Anyone want to say anything about Charlie? Andrew did an awful lot for our society when he played the organ recitals, 3 of them, and made a bunch of money for us. And I just wanted to mention he's buried right over, right there. Okay, now if the drivers will go get the cars and drive up here, we're going to go over to the other.
Charles C. Starr was born October the 6th, 1840, at Americus, where the Wabash and the Tippecanoe Rivers join. His father died when he was 6 years old. In 1861, he enlisted in the 87th Indiana Volunteers of Indiana, and he enlisted as Charles C. Starr. But after being discharged, he changed his name to Starr. Therefore, his bronze marker that Edwin was able to get for him had to be Charles C. Starr, because that's the way the government had him. Coming to Rensselaer, he joined partnerships with William Austin, and for 1 year it was Austin and Starr. And he bought Mr. Austin out, and his store was the building that caught fire and burned a year or so ago. He operated a grocery store, and his specialty was roasting coffee on the 2nd floor of his 3rd-story building. What an aroma that would be if he put up his windows. His first marriage was to Lucy C. Warner. She was the daughter of Mrs. Fritz Bedford, her first marriage. And Lucy died and is buried up in the front part of the cemetery. His second wife was Emma Rhodes, Edwin's aunt, and he built the house on the corner of Jefferson and Jackson, where he lived a short time. Then he built the brick house at the end of Cullen, where Grace intersects it. There's where the Tonners now live. It's been remade. The Starrs had 2 daughters, Fern, who married Charles Baldwin, and Floss, her is buried right over stone, right there. And Floss married William Barclay from Barclay Township. At one time, he was considered to have been very well off financially, but he had gone security for so many men, and they defaulted. So at his death in 1925, he was living on a Civil War pension in a rented house on Front Street near the mill. Mr. Starr bought the downtown lot of Sylvester Healy on March the 9th, 1876, and he built the store in 1877. March 2, 1909, this building was sold to W.J. Wright Furniture, an undertaker, and the proceeds went to pay the bills that he owed.
Is that a house on Front Street still there that he lived in?
Yes, it's the second from where the mill was.
Gotta go sit down.
Oh, I thought that's what she should do. I told her she could. Well, this is Grandpa Morgan. And he was our last survivor of the Civil War. We lived until 1945. And if you've seen the Rensselaer Revisited, he was in the parade out here to the cemetery. He was born February 14th on Valentine's Day, and he died in April of 45. He was our country's last surviving survivor of the Civil War, and he enlisted August the 11th, 1862 as a lad of 14. He was 17 when he joined Sherman's March to the Sea. He was discharged in Washington, D.C. He rode a boxcar to Indianapolis, then to Bradford, which is now Monon, and he had a stagecoach brought him to Rensselaer, and then he walked to his home in the country. And he found his mother picking strawberries, and he proceeded to have a big bowl of strawberries covered with cream. Mr. Morgan saw Abraham Lincoln in Washington, D.C. when he reviewed the troops. Grandpa Morgan died on the day that Franklin Roosevelt was buried. He participated in all the presidential elections in 1872 from then on, and he cast his first ballot for Ulysses S. Grant. All of his ballots were cast in the same precinct in Rensselaer, and if I have his home located, that was my precinct. I think that's...
And he was a good storyteller when he got to be older.
Yeah, and his wife was Mary Kenton Moore, and this is his son Kenneth, and his daughter Nora, and Cecil, and
Lady asked, what did he do after he got out of the army?
West Pat, I don't know. He was an old man when I knew him.
Yeah.
Does anybody know what he did?
Rode in parades.
Rode in parades, that's right. He lived on South Front Street. Do you know what he did, Tim?
I think he hung around the courthouse. I lived up there at the end of Washington and McKinley. Up in there.
Oh, did he? Well, then he wasn't in my... I thought he was on Front Street.
Well, when he was back, he lived with
Cecil.
a lady that lived in there that was from Detroit or something.
Well, that was his daughter,
Worth,
Cecil.
George Worth or
Cecil
Father
Moore,
Worth.
Cecil Miller.
Yeah, Cecil Miller.
She's buried right here. Yeah. Okay. Well, is there a description of his?
Oh, I know. There
Is that big enough for that many people?
What?
Is that big enough for that many people?
Yes. Their coffins lay this way. It goes down. It's deep. You see, it comes out to here. And I was here, out here when they buried Joe, and I got to look in. Wasn't that a morbid thing to do? Yeah. This came up. Yes.
Teachers were like that.
Yeah, that's right. He was born, Earl Reynolds was born in Battleground, Indiana on October the 18th, 1868. The family moved to Rensselaer in 1874. He loved all kinds of sports. He won 15 national and international championships in both ice and roller skating. He started in vaudeville in the mid-1890s and remained active in this career for 37 years. He married Nellie Donegan, and they traveled as a team. They once gave a command performance for King George of England, grandfather of Queen Elizabeth II. Nellie had been married before and had twin daughters, Helen and Maudie. This was quite a skating family. And Helen lives across the street from me now, 93 years old. Earl died in October of 1954. And his brother Joe is buried here, and that's Earl, and that's Nellie, and what's the name down there?
Hetty.
Eddie.
Hetty.
Hetty, okay. I don't know who she was. It might have been his mother.
Beulah, let's let John tell us about lifting this up.
Okay.
I was working for Paul Carton when we buried Earl, and we brought the wrecker out and set it here, put a chain around this and lifted this up, and then moved it over till Earl was buried. He filled it up. It's 4 in there, and that was all that was ever going to be buried here.
So is there any dirt over them, or is it all?
No, just the caskets in there.
There's even an air place.
Here's on this end too.
Earl wanted me to join the skating troupe, but you know my mother wouldn't let me. Oh, I can't get that.
I'll tell you a little story about Earl duck hunting. We were out southwest of town, and I was with Jimmy Cooper, and right across the water there was a fence where the old dump used to be out there, and we saw some ducks out there, and we started shooting, and here on the other side ran a body. Run away from that, and it was Earl. He was getting all the shot. We didn't know he was there.
Okay.
Because when Beulah asked me if I would speak about my uncle, I had told her a story of my sister Clara and my first cousin Florence Biggs Fisher Parkinson, that they came down, and we were trying our best. We had found Josiah Biggs Sr.'s grave in West Lebanon. Junior's is in West Lebanon, and we have their last will and testimony. Well, we were trying to find Hiram's, my great-great-grandfather, and we were unable to find it. So we visited to a Mr. McIntosh in Fowler. He informed us that he had played with my father, knew exactly where the cemetery was. And you'd be surprised how many old cemeteries are going downhill. And as we went around this square mile about 4 times. I finally told my sister, I said, let's take this little path road looking back. We took it back, and we found the cemetery. There's very few stones left. A lot of the stones are in heaps. And we're sitting there and standing, looking around over it. And in my mind, I was visualizing what Mildred Biggs, which she's buried up here, which is also a cousin, had said where she had went and to visit the grave. And I do not know. The only thing that possessed me, I would say, was God, because all of a sudden I took off running. My sister's wondering what's wrong with me. I dropped to my knees. I started pulling up grass, just throwing it. And my sister is hollering, what's the matter with you? And all of a sudden I started out screaming, I have found it, I have found it. And I had uncovered the grass off of the tombstone. We have pictures of it, where it had fallen over and had broken. As I said, only God could have led me to that. So that is why I have got the little bit on that, on the descendants and Martha and Hiram in there. And then my grandmother, which is Dewey's mother, right here, I have her descendants. And George Zirkel was born in Germany and died in Germany. And Dr. George Herman Otto Zirkel was born in Germany, but came to the United States and was a doctor, and he did fight in the Spanish-American War, and there is a museum in Columbus, Ohio of him. I will tell you that on page 2, I went to the book, and I went and corrected my genealogy records. Now I got to go back and do it in my computer because I didn't really check the records. I have, from my grandmother, the Golden Star Honor Roll that was published in 1918 of Indiana, every person that died during the war of World War I. And of course, Dewey, my uncle, was the first one to die in Jasper County. His picture is here. And in the book, it said he was born in 1980, in 1889, or 98. My records and my computer showed 97. So I changed my records to read what this book says. The tombstone today, I checked it out, says 97, and I think, I'm not sure, because at the courthouse in the Veterans Office it shows it to be 94, which my father was born in 94, which this is my father. This is also a picture of my father when he was at the same age of Dewey and how much they looked alike, as you can well see. And I do have the book if anybody wants to look at it. Then when you turn on, I was very disappointed at one time of the Rensselaer Republican. Lefty Clark was not with us. I do have the newspaper article. There was a lady from St. Joe that wrote an article, wanted to do historical work for her thesis paper. So I helped her with her stuff. She took it to the Rensselaer Republican to have printed. The person that was up there told her she did not know what she was talking about, so he changed her article. So the article that was printed in the paper is not true. I did ask them to make corrections of it. They would not do so, because in this paper, the person that worked there assumed that the Dewey Wilson Biggs, which is Uncle Sherm's boy, was this Dewey's son. This Dewey was never married and had no children. So he changed it as if he was. Then at the same time, at the time of this printing, my Aunt Irene Sigmund was alive and she lived in Remington. Well, when he read the article, he said, well, no, you're wrong. It's the Irene Sigmund that lives here in Rensselaer. So he changed those articles. And also on the front of the article, on the Flatiron Park, he did not put it word for word. The big rock, my father always said, was brought up from the Iroquois River by, I don't remember how many teams of horses, was put there because that was the rock that Dewey, my uncle, and my father and them used to jump off of and go swimming in the Iroquois River. They brought the rock up and put there as a memorial for all veterans who died in World War I, not just my uncle. But I did always consider it my uncle's memorial. In it also, if you turn the page, there's articles here. The letters that he printed from my uncle to his mother, my grandmother, were pretty much intact since they were the written articles. I have here, which are all welcome, one of his letters that he wrote home. I have here his billfold that was sent back, and inside the billfold is the receipt where the service sent it back after he died there. I have his records here. This is a record from the courthouse service that shows it 1894. I have the picture of him when he was at Great Lakes. It does not say about him going into New Jersey for his schooling, but he did in his letter here that I've got. And this is a degree thing that he got from the service to show that he was a welder, because they did send him to school to be a welder there. His body was brought back, and here's a picture of when it was brought back from France. This is a picture that they sent to my grandmother of where he was buried in France. In the article you will see here's the postcard that he sent that he arrived in France. There's a copy of the telegram that's sent to my grandmother when he was killed. In it you will have your letters. I just brought a few of the letters of when he died, how they notified her, what they wanted to do with the body, and so forth. You do have copies. I do have other letters at home, and I've got some others here, his life insurance policies. I did not make copies of all of these because I thought you probably would not be interested in them. But this is the original cross, which is from the Foreign Services, his cross of where he was buried in France. They brought back, and there he is buried here. That is all I have got to say.
The story
Yes.
about your grandmother Or was it your mother didn't want to clean up the
My mother.
Okay,
My
I
mother
thought that
did
was
not
a
want
nice
to.
one.
Whether you know it or not, this is, if it was cleaned up, I wanted to clean this up and polish it. This is bronze. My mother, when she put this across after my father died, said no, not to have it cleaned up because someone would probably come and steal it because it is bronze. So we had that put into the cement. Okay? And of course, this is my father. This is his first wife who was dead before my mother married my father. This is his little girl, and she also died before he married my mother. And all 5 of us kids are from the same mother. And my mother, we had room for her here.